Hello, my name is Christa Carmen, and I'm going to be reading my short story called Through the Looking Glass and Straight into Hell. It is featured in Orphans of Bliss, Tales of Addiction Horror, edited by Mark Matthews of Wicked Run Press. I hope you like it. Then, the white porcelain sink is a leaky lifeboat beneath her. Allie clings to it with slick fingers and prays not to drown. There is something wrong, all wrong, with the area between her ribcage and her pelvis. It fills with heat so crackling and white hot. She brings a hand to her neck, waiting for the flames to rise up her throat. As quickly as it ignites, the blaze dulls. Her organs freeze, then shatter. Shards of ice poke her sides like knives. The cold is awful in its heaviness, as if she's swallowed something beset by rigor mortis, the rot of which will infect her as it thaws. The cycle begins anew, fire to ice, ice to fire. But before she can retch or run or recoil, a knock comes at the bathroom door. Ms. Stevens, I'm your caseworker. We need to speak. The voice scrapes her skull like a fork against glass. I'm coming in, Ms. Stevens. We have to get through the rest of your paperwork. Allie lurches to the side to avoid being hit by the swinging door. A petite blonde in baby shark print scrubs gestures for Allie to follow her into the main part of the room. She takes a seat on a polyethylene chair, the edges of which are rounded enough to render an attempted bedsheet hanging unsuccessful. Allie follows, navigating the vinyl tile floor as if it's quicksand, and falls hard onto the mattress. The internal frost gives way to another blistering heat wave, and she groans. I'm Renee Murphy, the caseworker says, ignoring Allie's distress. Can you tell me your name and date of birth? Alice Stevens, she croaks. September 20th, 2001. Thank you. I understand you were feeling too poorly to complete the intake last night. Yeah, well, I'm not feeling any better this morning, if you haven't noticed. Renee doesn't react. This is your 13th admission to Harbor House Detox, correct? Allie grunts. Have you thought about what you'll do when you're discharged from our facility this time around? Allie's face, like everything else, pulses with pain, but she manages a withering glare. I can barely tolerate sitting here talking to you. I don't know how I'm going to survive the next 5 minutes without running through that plate glass window, so no, I haven't thought about what I'm doing 5 days from now. Renee nods. She's infuriating with her sleek blonde bun and ridiculous vintage scrubs. Allie wishes she could regurgitate this sickness down Renee's throat and see how well she tolerates having a conversation while her insides are on fire. Well, you see, Alice, I go by Allie. Sorry, you see, Allie, I'm not your typical caseworker. I specialize in virtual reality recovery simulations. Has anyone spoken to you about VR recovery before? The first 12 times Allie was accompanied up the back wing elevator to the detox, talk of VR recovery simulations were just that, talk. She paid as little attention to stories of glimpsed futures and visions of meaningful drug-free lives as she had to which halfway house or methadone clinic was the best. I can afford what my plan covers, nothing else. That's just the thing, Allie. You're actually eligible for VR due to a change in your plan. The duration of which would be, she checks her tablet, 9 years, 3 months, and 27 days. Renee's face makes no secret as to how exciting she thinks this prospect should be. Allie wants nothing more than to curl into a ball and scream, or else take a scalding shower while sipping ice water, but she forces herself to meet the caseworker's eye. Thanks, but I'm not interested. Renee sets the tablet in her lap and purses her lips. Allie knows what is coming. Some variation of the "you're going to die if you keep doing what you're doing" conversation. She zones out, concentrating on not running out the door, hustling for a bag, and washing this bullshit away on a tidal wave of China white. While Renee yammers on about the potency of synthetic opioids and the irreversible effects of various infectious diseases, Allie nods as if she is listening, as if she cares. And what, she says when Renee finishes, sitting in some cryogenic freezer for a decade is any better? That's not at all what virtual reality recovery entails. The simulation is set so that whether you're approved for 10 days worth or 10 years, it will take just 6 hours to complete. You would be in a room at the end of the hall, hooked up to an EEG, heart rate and blood pressure monitors, everything to keep you medically stable. Though what you've been subjecting yourself to on the street is far more dangerous than even the most intense of VR sessions. Allie looks to the plate glass window again. It's a ludicrous idea, but it might blunt the agony of her withdrawal, especially when what they're giving her for comfort meds is the equivalent of slapping a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. She's sick of it all. The detox regimen and group therapy, the visits from AA groups and NA speakers, the war stories shared at the common room table at breakfast, each addict trying to one-up the others. Most of all, she's sick of herself, of how she cannot banish the cravings to shoot her veins full of bliss, of salve, of warmth and light and love. Why would the equivalent of an exceptionally vivid fantasy film shake her from the cycle she's been in for so fucking long? The simulations are the embodiment of what we as counselors have always tried to do, which is to get our patients to see that there's another way of living, free from chaos and disappointment, from mental health facilities and jail. There's so much you can accomplish if you get sober, Allie. So many things to look forward to. Allie resists the urge to laugh in Renee's face. The steps to get from here to there are too many, she says instead. There's no way to clean up my life without relapsing first. That's what the simulation does, Renee says, leaning forward. She catches the tablet before it slides off her lap. That's its point, its very essence, to show you that you can do it, that it is possible. Every counselor and doctor and sponsor over the past 8 years has told me the exact same thing. What difference does it make if I see it play out? Simulation is not some glorified video game, Renee explains. It's built from information about you. We feed it the details of your intake session, past counseling notes, your background, education, hopes, dreams, personality type, family tree, DNA. It will show you the most realistic path your life would follow post-discharge, short of having a crystal ball or a time machine. It will show you the results of decisions you would make without drugs in your system, based on decisions you've made in the past. This is interesting. Allie's never heard this part before. Still, something nags at her through her queasiness and discomfort, something she wishes she hasn't thought of, but can't deny it now that she has. What if it's worse? I'm sorry. What if the life the simulation shows me is worse than the one I have now? What if I get sober and I get hit by a bus, or am diagnosed with cancer? Or I get clean, marry Prince Charming, and he cheats or beats me? What if no matter what I do, I'm just as miserable? What if... She takes a breath and blurts her biggest fear. What if I never find anything I love as much as drugs? Renee nods once and stands. She tucks the tablet under her arm and studies Allie where she's slumped on the bed. Her face betrays no emotion. You're right, she says. That is a possibility. Those are all perfectly viable futures the VR could show you. You might be no better than you are now. You might be far, far worse. Allie squirms under Renee's gaze. The caseworker's amber irises are like the swirling chamber of a loaded syringe. Allie wishes she could disappear into their warm, silent depths. But what if your life without drugs and alcohol is everything you dreamed it could be, Renee says. Everything you've ever wanted. Success, a family, contentment, love. You would turn down the opportunity to see that? To know that without drugs, you are happy? Renee turns and walks to the door without waiting for an answer. Grateful to be alone, Allie closes her eyes. But then Renee's voice floats back to her on the disinfectant-scented air, cuts through the anticonvulsant and anti-nausea meds, the fog of her dopamine-starved brain. You don't have a crystal ball or a time machine, Allie. So there's only one way to find out. And what do you have to lose? Now. The applause is enthusiastic and prolonged, accompanied by warm smiles and appreciative nods. Alice grips the podium with one hand, the other still holding her place in her book, a book she has to remind herself people purchased, read, enjoyed, and from which they came to hear her read aloud. The bookstore's event coordinator, a bubbly, turquoise-haired young woman named Maura, makes her way toward Alice, clapping as she skirts the narrow aisle between rows of tightly packed chairs. Alice Shelley, everyone, Maura exclaims when she reaches the front of the room, referring to Alice by her pen name. That was phenomenal, utterly creepy and gorgeously written. The audience takes up their vigorous nodding once again. Alice feels herself blushing and murmurs a thank you. She's a far cry from a best-selling author, but praise for her work is always exciting. This is the 6th event for her debut novel, and she's still surprised by how much she enjoys them. Seeing the book that she spent 3 years writing in readers' hands held out for her to sign is another thrill entirely. We have 15 minutes left, Maura continues, and Alice has been gracious enough to agree to answer some questions about Sequela Manor. Who wants to get us started? A few hands go up. Maura smiles and steps back, indicating that the floor, once again, is Alice's. Alice sips from a mug of rose-hip tea, then nods at a man leaning against a set of shelves marked fantasy. Hello, he says shyly. It was so great to hear you read, and that passage was one of my favorites. My question is, what made you decide to combine the horror of addiction with trappings of the Gothic? They don't seem to go together at first glance. Sure, we've been dealing with the opioid epidemic for 50 years, since the 1990s, but the issue of heroin addiction still feels more modern than those explored by Radcliffe or Lewis. When I got to the scene where Amelia discovers that Dr. Linnaeus has been, he pauses and looks around guiltily. Sorry, I just realized that would be a spoiler. When I got to the dungeon scene, I realized how well a Gothic setting could encompass the distress of someone running from their addiction, and I was curious how you conceptualized the pairing. Alice smiles. The question is really just a riff on where do you get your ideas, but she doesn't mind. The question hits on themes close to her heart. I'm so glad you liked the passage, she says. It's one of my favorites too. As for the intersection between addiction horror and the Gothic, I'm afraid my pairing isn't all that inspired. Addiction is inextricably linked with every subgenre of horror. Addiction is horror, and the history of horror is incomplete without addiction. It both sneaks and explodes through so many of our stories. Captain Crozier was plagued by drink before he was ever plagued by the Tunbach or a ship beset by ice. And Wilkie Collins' account of Dickens' obsession with Drood was distorted by laudanum. Vampires have long been stand-ins for insatiable addicts, and addicts with their mindless obsessions are often referred to as zombies. Addiction horror is horror history, but it's the future of horror as well. Alice stops and blushes again. At least that's my take. The man smiles and thanks her. Alice looks around for another raised hand and points to a middle-aged woman dressed in a burgundy sweater and khaki pants. Large pearl earrings wink from her ears. Maura reappears and hands the woman a microphone. It's only when the woman speaks that Alice notices how pale her face is, the blotchy red spots peeking out from the neck of the sweater. The hand that grips the microphone trembles, and she's breathing as if she's just run up a flight of stairs. The woman is nervous or very angry. You're an addict yourself, aren't you? The woman says, and some deep part of Alice recoils. Or a recovering addict, as you say. My daughter was a recovering addict and a writer too, like you. She wrote the kinds of things you write. Addicts whose pasts come back to haunt them, methadone clinic mothers, the ghosts of boyfriends who died of overdoses. She used to tell me that it helped keep her clean, writing those awful, triggering stories. And then she relapsed, overdosed, and died. You were her favorite author. Did I mention that? The room and everyone in it disappears. Only Alice and this woman remain. The microphone gives a high-pitched squeal. The angry, sad, trembling woman with the dangly pearl earrings narrows her eyes and licks her lips. So my question is, she continues, are you aware that writing these kinds of things means you're not really cured? The room whooshes back to Alice. The audience is horrified. Maura attempts to grab the microphone, but the woman jerks it away. That it's not a matter of if you will relapse, each word is a buckshot, but Alice does not avert her gaze, but only a matter of when. A bookstore employee manages to snatch the microphone. The woman gives Alice one final look of anguish and staggers toward the exit, leaving Alice staring at the book in her hands and sucking in air with shaky breaths. A man takes Alice by the arm. He apologizes over and over while leading her to the back of the store. Take your time, he says, holding open the door to a spacious bathroom. As the manager of Black Cats and Bookmarks, let me say how sorry I am. We strive to provide a safe space for all the authors we host. Alice nods numbly and slips into the bathroom. She double locks it and flips the switch. The room is papered from floor to ceiling with covers from The New Yorker. Light reflects off cartoon politicians and abstract animals. Dizzy, Alice bends forward and places her hands on her knees. Staring at the intricate tile patterns, she tries to calm her breathing. The echo of the woman's words, "You're not really cured," takes a lap around her brain. She refuses to let it circle a second time, afraid it will get stuck on a loop and drive her crazy. She straightens, runs the cold water, splashes some over her face. It's only after she blots her cheeks that she looks in the mirror. Before she can meet her own gaze, the light goes out. Alice gasps, then feels foolish and reaches for the switch. She jiggles it, but nothing happens. The fuck, she whispers. She pats her pockets before remembering she left her phone in her purse. She reaches for the doorknob. The light flashes on. The mirror is visible again, and the mirror is wrong. all fucking wrong. No, she must have gotten turned around in the dark and is facing a photograph. The image is of the back of a woman's head. The long hair is dark and unkempt. Alice moves. The woman moves too. The woman is backdropped by New Yorker covers. Alice is definitely still facing the mirror, but the reflection does not match. The reflection is somehow not hers. Alice freezes. The backwards woman goes still. Alice knows her eyes are wide and unblinking, but she cannot see the truth of this in the mirror. Her insides ice over, then turn hot as lava. She feels like she swallowed a mouthful of ash. She's too scared to run, and so studies the figure. The woman's elbows form downward slanting right angles, and she wears a stretched out ballet sweater. The fabric is threadbare, and there are holes in the sleeves. Alice can see each of the vertebrae in the long, thin neck. She has a twisted urge to run her fingers along the knobby bones as if playing a xylophone. Hello? Alice chokes out. There is no answer from the mirror, but the backwards woman's body hitches slightly, as if she too spoke a word. Alice tries to scoot back, but she's as sluggish as if she shot herself full of black tar heroin. She wishes the mirror were a portal. She wishes the backwards woman was a ghost. She fears she knows exactly what the mirror is. The figure in the mirror raises one hand in acknowledgement. Alice does not return the gesture. The walls around the mirror shimmer like the air above pavement on a hot summer day. There's an insectile hiss in Alice's ears. The backwards woman takes one step forward, then another. Her reflection grows smaller with each step. The farther the woman walks, the closer she is getting. Alice is being snuck up on, she is sure of it. But there is nothing behind her but a wall. Alice's breath grows short. The lights go off again. A whimper escapes her. Her heartbeat pounds in her ears. And what is that? A footstep? A puff of air hits the back of her neck, soft as a breath. Alice's arms break out in goose flesh. The lights flash on, and the backwards woman is behind Alice, leaning over her shoulder. She is no longer backwards. Her mouth is open in a scream, both deafening and silent. It is all around Alice, and yet only in her mind. Alice opens her own mouth, but by the time her scream echoes in the bathroom, the figure is gone. Alice is alone. And I will stop there. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the story. And if you want to hear the end of it, you can check it out in Wicked Run Press's Orphans of Bliss, Tales of Addiction Horror. There's some great stories in here by a whole slew of amazing authors. And thank you.